Kind of thesis when we started that every business will be an AI
Amazon
business.
CEO Andy Jassy says artificial intelligence will lead to a reduction of its corporate workforce.
AI does better where there is higher complexity. If it's an easy decision to make, the value AI will deliver will be low.
What should be my framework that something which cannot be a feature for an OpenAI to launch tomorrow?
Strong belief, especially as an early stage investor, is that it's the people who make the big difference, right? Only people make you money. We strongly suggest that, especially for AI application.
Rahul, you run an AI first venture capital fund. Let me start by understanding what you mean by AI. What kind of, because every business today is an AI business.
Yeah, that
So,
was the kind of thesis when we started that every business will be an AI business. Uh, so, so AI is obviously when you start looking at it from an investment lens, you have to look at not just the overall picture that there is AI. Of course, there's AI, but there are multiple layers to it. In from a SenseAI perspective, we look at it as a four-layer ecosystem. Right at the bottom, you have the hardware, the data centers,
like the NVIDIAs of the world.
NVIDIA's, Microsoft, Google, that entire ecosystem of hyperscalers. But the data, just think data center, and that will give you the first layer on which AI will run. Then is the core, or what people call foundational AI, which is where OpenAI, and now, of course, increasingly many Chinese firms, of course, Anthropic, the guys are building the foundational models which run on this hardware. And then above that, right at the top, actually, let me go there first, which is applications, is what you and I will use, right? It could be a chatbot, it could be a personal finance application. We all use applications, and that's they will be AI applications. And to build those applications, even on those foundational models, you need certain tooling, right? Like, for example, data security, data management. You need guardrails, observability. How is your application working? Things like that. So that tooling layer. So that's the four layers: infrastructure, foundational, tooling, applications.
Okay, let me just ask you a little bit more to make this clear to the audience. So, obviously, OpenAI is the foundational layer, NVIDIA is the data center layer. I think these two layers are fairly easy to understand. Anybody who's built a LLM, Gemini, Claude, Grok, all of these come in the foundational layer. Um, Perplexity, what is that?
So Perplexity very clearly started in the application layer. It was actually in the beginning more of a wrapper on top of OpenAI and Anthropic and on top of Claude. Uh, they are increasingly trying to build their own foundational models, right? So they are backward integrating. But they started, and even today, they are a great example of a lovely AI native application, right? He thought, how do you redesign this entire knowledge discovery and consumption model for the AI era? And that's what he's built.
Okay, okay. I guess in terms of consumer facing applications, Perplexity would probably be the biggest example, right? I think most of the other applications are either built for coders or enterprise use cases.
While in some form I agree with you, but take another one which I love is Lovable, right? Which helps you build applications. It's designed, you can think it's designed for coders, but really it's designed for non-coders to be able to build applications. So it's an application, right? And these guys have hit 100 million with 20 employees in a year. Yeah. It's just phenomenal the way some of these guys have grown. The AI ecosystem is just phenomenal as far as that is concerned.
Tell me about the tooling layer. Okay, so I understood the application layer, foundational layer, data center or hardware layer. What is the tooling layer?
So, so if you go look at building a AI application, you want to build a user facing application, right? Now, much like when we were building software, any application in historically, you needed tools to build those applications. So the AI tooling layer is just the AI enabled portions of that tooling, right? Focused around AI. And what are the kind of problems you need to solve? So one all AI applications will have tons of data around it, right? And of course, to train some of the AI, you need to even do synthetic data. I mean, you may not have enough data right in the beginning. So synthetic data and data management become one kind of tool, right, which is around the data piece of this problem. Then second key piece is security, right? I mean, uh, especially when you look at enterprise applications, security becomes a big concern. But not just that. If you are using building a, let's say, a financial application, um, something which robo advisor, how you invest into the markets, you need to have your data very very deeply protected, right? It's financial information, it's your information, and you want lots of safeguards around it, as well as so how is that data stored, how is that data accessed, and when it gives you a recommendation also, you need to think about security. So security is not just about your data, but also the data the application surfaces for you, right? If it starts surfacing, like for example, if you go and ask a financial advisory application how to build a bomb, or how to do fake videos, it can go ahead and answer you if it's trained on a LLM. A LLM is sitting behind it. But you don't want to be answering those questions. So you want your areas which you play in to be clearly guardrails to be put in. So security and guardrails becomes a second very critical pillar in the tooling space. A third big pillar to me is observability, right? How is your application working? How many people are coming there? What kind of questions are they asking? Are they getting answered well? Now, see, this is now qualitative, not just quantitative. So, historically, observability was always just quantitative. How many people came? What did they do? But you want to know whether your application is actually helping the user meet his end goal. And that is a non quantitative problem, it's as qualitative angles to it. And so, observability is getting rebuilt, right? As you think of how applications will get built in the future, where they, we've heard all this about agentic, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the as we go along. But you're going to now, AI agents on your behalf are going to different websites using different APIs, different tools, bringing all that together. Now all of this is very very different from how software applications used to work. And given that they will have agency based on your credentials, based on who you are. And because of that, the information they will access on your behalf and get that data back. And then the AI will work on it and use that data to access the next app. So now this becomes a lot more complicated. So the tools are in some ways old. I mean, they've always existed, right? When we were doing software applications, but their facets have completely changed with AI.
What were the legacy tools like? Any big names I would have heard of?
So, if I take, since I was talking about observability last, Datadog would be a great example, right? On the observability side, data management. I mean, the two, three really big guys who's data breaks and uh, so companies like that. So there's a whole bunch of companies became very very large in tooling globally.
And Cloudflare for security.
Yeah, Cloudflare for security, and then all, I mean, from authentication to management of authorization, lots of other tools also there.
Got it. Okay. Um, why is security a big deal? For example, companies use Gmail. Gmail has access to personal information, whatever, a lot of proprietary information of the companies. But I don't hear companies thinking of some additional tool to secure their mails which are running through Gmail. So why is it any different from Gemini, on which I am asking questions and getting answers? Why is it different from Gmail?
No, no, no. So Gmail is the application, right? So the guy who built Gmail, so in this case Google, would have put in the security layers, right? Because how they handle your data. So these are the tools used by application builders to build the applications, not by the user, but by the builder.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Got it. Okay. Understood. Understood. Okay. So the security behind the scenes is what you mean by security. Um, is there I was under the impression that observability means being able to understand the black box of an LLM is a black box, right? You don't know why it gave an answer that it gave. That's not what observability implies.
No, so observability is much larger as a concept. So, though what you said would be one portion of it, right? Why did the AI give this answer? So, actually, one key piece of observability that you have available today is to understand that given the same prompt, what are the different answers AI gave, right? Which, while you may not understand why those answers came, for the same or similar questions, these were the different answers it gave, gives you a sense of whether your AI is performing well or not, right? And of course, variations on that. But the in so what you're talking about is actually comes under the term of explainability. That you can yes, you can understand
Hmm.
why AI did what it did.
Hmm,
So the
hmm, hmm,
why,
hmm.
not the what.
Okay,
Observability largely is a what question,
got it.
asked in
Understood.
different manners, and
Hmm,
not the why
hmm,
question.
hmm. Okay, okay, understood. Okay, so I've understood the tooling layer. Now, given this is the lay of the land, as a VC fund, where are your binoculars focused on? Where are you looking for breakout companies that you want to fund?
So we actually focus on the top two layers, which is applications, and a majority of our investment will go into applications because we think the applications for the next era are yet to be built. Right? I mean, a few have started being built. I gave a couple of examples earlier, but there's a whole host of things. Literally every problem you can think of will be solved with AI, or will be attempted to be solved with AI, which means there'll be applications for literally everything which is AI native. And those companies would be very interesting to us. And of course, because, and also you must understand our lens is as an Indian VC, right? We look at Indian founders mostly, and we have to figure out what are we good at, we as a country, we as a people, what our ecosystem produces well of. So we do a great job of applications, right? We've got, I mean, we started, of course, our industry started with the history of Y2K and the entire software system integration companies, the Infosys, Wipros, TCSs of the world, built our first set of tech. Then the second set of tech happened with the internet boom, and you had Indian native unicorns like Flipkart, like Oyo, all the internet unicorns that you can think of is the second generation where we built software for ourselves, right? Like in the first gen, it was building software for US companies on their designs for their users. Then we built software for our users with our own design. And then we went to the SaaS. Third generation would be SaaS, in my view, where we were building applications for now global customers, but based on our own design, our own understanding. And this skill set is now moving into the AI layer. So we did well, right? And because we're really good at problem solving, so applications are about solving problems, users' problems, right? So that's why we do it. The second, also tooling is also a problem solving layer, right? It solves a problem for application builders. So we again, and we have today, I mean, the arguably the largest pool of AI developers in the world, right? Stanford Index had it at one, then two, and it keeps shifting between those two numbers. So either we are the largest or second largest density of AI talent in the world. And that talent then obviously when it tries to build AI applications faces problems. So these problems are well understood by the developers in India, and thus we do a decent job of tooling as well. So we think those two layers is where we want to focus on. More importantly, and this if you go back to any boom in history, see the first, most of the capital in the beginning goes towards building the infrastructure on which everything will run, right? But all infrastructure, doesn't matter which industry we're talking about, is a revenue generating layer, right? It's not a valuation play. It doesn't give you 100x, 1000x, 10,000x. I mean, if you go look at the internet companies which built at the top of the stack, which is all the trillion-dollar companies today, which is Microsoft, Google, Meta, these all built applications. They did not build the foundations of the internet. The foundations of the internet were built by people like Cisco, which built the routers. And of course, its valuation went crazy in the beginning of the internet boom, but collapsed later on. Or AOL, America Online, which doesn't even exist today, right? Or the browser companies. So the infrastructure gets built first. And I think infrastructure is a large, it requires large amounts of capital. Like $300 billion went into infrastructure last year globally. This year, more than that will go in. I mean, that number's already got crossed. US, of course, has Stargate program and $500 billion programs, and Meta is building a 70 billion dollar data center. So you have massive projects going on in the US. We can't match that. Capital is not available at the same level in India. To As a VC, what you're looking is to multiply people's money. I cannot do that if I invest in infrastructure. I invest in data centers. Yeah, it's a great revenue yielding asset, but it is not a value multiplying asset, right? So we focus only on the top two layers, and it's a great thing that Indians are good at it. So it works in every way for us.
Okay, okay. Uh, I'd argue that most Indian unicorns are still solving roti kapda makan problems, right? The Beyond that, it's mostly like American tech, like say Instagram or whatever that people use, or Gmail for email, etc. There are no Indian unicorns in the B2C space beyond that roti kapda makan layer. So is that why you're not that bullish in the AI B2C space?
No, I would not say. Okay, firstly, that focus comes from what we are good at, right? If you look at the founders of the fund, which is Raja and myself, we're the two partners, right? We will be the ones investing the money and spending our time helping our portfolio companies grow. That piece, we both come from enterprise background, so we understand that piece really well. Second is also a question of um, I think the consumer piece, we still are solving so many, there's still so many unsolved problems just generically. I mean, distribution. Distribution is not an AI problem. It's purely a last mile and all those kind of, these are physical problems, right? We still have so many physical problems to deal with in this country. That I think there's a huge amount of play for B2C businesses built without AI itself. And so our expertise lies more in enterprise than in consumer. So thus natural affinity towards enterprise. And two is the Indian opportunities in B2C are not very AI specific always.
Hmm, Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. Understood. Okay. Um, okay. So now, within the tooling space, what are the types of markets there?
So, so most of the markets we play with are global, right? And I think we should look at it. When we come to B2B, the markets always are global. Now, US firms are focused largely on the US market, so may not be competitors for you today, but at some point they will be. Now, Adobe is there in every market. Microsoft is there in every market. So much like that, all those global AI plays will come to this country also at some point. It's a question of priority. As a startup, you have to choose your battles very carefully. So today, most of them are battling for the US market than the Indian market. But thus, we will not bet on Indian founders who are only building for India. Built in India for the world. So now take tooling, that's a classic example. So while we want to see founders who understand the problems Indian developers have and have learned from that, those are the same problems. The tools actually most people use are the same globally. I mean, the infrastructure layer is the same data centers, the same hyperscalers everybody depends on, the same foundational layer, which is the same models. So the problems are the same for all developers of AI across the world. So we are looking for guys who can solve problems for them globally. So and I'll give you examples from my portfolio. So one is like a company called PipeShift. Now PipeShift does it builds a full orchestration. So today, if you want to use open source AI, which is getting better and better, and I think there'll be a large adoption of open source AI versus proprietary models. I mean, while proprietary models take the news today because that's how this entire boom started, you'll see the shift happen. I mean, this is classic. iPhone, of course, ruled the roost in terms of number of items shipped, all of that in the beginning, but Android took over units very, very soon. So same will happen in the AI world. And pipe shift enables that shift to happen, right? You can go build the entire your entire application with your, you take open source model, train it with your own data, and then deploy it in production, and it works 4x more efficiently than deploying it on servers through Amazon or Google or wherever, because you use something like Pipeshift. Now this kind of efficiency, this kind of manageability of your entire AI infrastructure, simply in the end, AI application guys, why are they using tools? To simplify their lives. It's really a simplification problem, because what they want to be really good at is solving the user's problem. So why take on all this headache of doing hard engineering work at the lower end of the stack to, you know, that's why it's called pipe shift. I mean, make all your pipes work, all the plumbing work. It does the plumbing for you. It takes care of all of that. And that's what we love about that.
So, what are things which an OpenAI will not build? That like if we talk of this meeting note taker, yes, it's a feature that OpenAI can offer, or Microsoft Copilot is offering, or Google Gemini is also integrated into Google Meets now. Um, so, if I am a builder thinking about building something in the AI domain, what should be my framework, that something which cannot be a feature for an OpenAI to launch tomorrow, something which is scalable, where there is some way of distribution? What are some suggestions you have for builders?
I think that's a great question, right? And we should dig deep into this. So, see, start from the first principles. The first principle is that these large guys can only go after large, very, very large markets, right? $1 billion market is great for a startup. It does not move the needle for Google. Google, you cannot get even 2 minutes during the board meeting to discuss a market which is one, two, $3 billion. Nobody's interested. Nobody's going to agree to enter that market. So the largest markets are typically out, right? Do not go after that as a startup. It's going to be very hard. And second piece is look at where domain knowledge starts coming in. Like Google is known for its search, right? It also got into the enterprise search space. But enterprise search is not as simple as web search. I mean, web search has its own complications, but they are standardized, right? Once you solve it, you've solved it. Enterprises don't work like that. Every enterprise is a different set of systems and different set of security rules and different way the content is consumed, and you need to literally cater for all of those variations to really build a enterprise search business. So Google never did well at it. So wherever you start seeing this specificity, so any domain, as you go deeper into, and I'll give you examples from my portfolio, right? Best way for you to understand what I invest in is to look at my portfolio. So, for example, auditing, right? Internal audits. Each internal audit is performed for each company. Each company has its own systems from which you have to pick up the data. Two, you have to understand the industry and company specific terms. Both are important, right? And now once you understand it, you should get better at understanding that for that industry, and of course when you do the audit next time for the same company, right? Now this creates a different memory, different set of knowledge base for each customer. Third is that there is a domain expertise around auditing. How is auditing done? How do you measure risk? How, what is the data you look at? What are the rules you run? And while that may be slightly standardized, what I'm when you combine all these pieces, it no longer looks like a business a big guy will do well at, right? Second example from, let's say, the construction industry. So I'll do a vertical now. Auditing works cross, it's functional specific. If you look at construction, it is vertical. Now, in the vertical piece, construction as such is a massive industry. It's a very, very large industry. But how is that tooling getting deployed? How is that application getting deployed? It depends on each side. So, and here there's a company called Continue.ai in my portfolio, which helps you manage the construction process. Why hasn't it? Construction is an industry which uses very little of technology because
So
it
it's a
was,
project management tool.
yeah. And
Continue. Okay.
and actual construction project management. What I mean, the difference is you could do project management using Microsoft Project, where you enter the data and gives you pretty charts. But how does that data come about? Because it's all blue collar workers. Who's going to go enter the data as to how much work was done today? You literally have zero control. The reason you have a lot of delays in construction projects is largely because you have no visibility, no transparency in actually what's happening on at the site. The planning process is very digital and very, you can do 3D walkthroughs, all that latest technology you can put. But as soon as construction starts, everything disappears. It's WhatsApp and calls happening, site visits. That's how you get actual visibility on what's happening. Here the AI does all of that automatically. It just takes a you just have to put a 360-degree camera on the hard hat of one of your employees there, typically the site manager, and when he walks through the site, the data is automatically captured. He doesn't have to do anything specifically to capture data, not even walk a specific path. He can just walk the way he does. Data gets captured, gets translated into a 3D model by AI, and progress judged, defects detected, workflows done. Now, that's a massive leap for the industry. But look at the pieces you're solving. Now, this is not just a LLM solving it, right? There is
Yeah, you
it
need computer vision and
Yeah, so there are multiple pieces to this workflow. There are multiple complexities. The data you need is so each site. I mean, what is the under? Actually, you'll find that under construction site photos are much fewer online in the public domain than completed building pictures.
yes, right. Mm.
So you see, data also becomes a domain. So is the data easily available? If the data is easily available, it becomes easier for the big guys to learn from it. As the data is harder to get to, what is unique in that data, then you get closer and closer to what we love to fund.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Uh, uh, Talk about your framework for evaluating opportunities. We've kind of gotten into data as a mode, but just help me understand the full framework in which you evaluate opportunities.
So, our framework is uh, called VDAT. The V stands for variety, D for data, A for architecture, and T for team. Right. Let me go dig deeper into each of those layers. So, data piece partly you understood, right? It is, if every data that you are using is public data, then everybody has access to it. It's going to be hard. But sometimes even there, you can go build different combinations and take out different insights from other people, and we look at that. But without great data, there's no great AI. That's fundamentally where we start from. So we're looking at what data you have, and the more proprietary or hard to get data. I mean, construction data may not be proprietary, but that it is hard to get. As soon as you start doing that, it becomes harder and harder for other guys to compete with you. So that's why we look at data. Architecture, people say I'm using the latest LLM models in the world. It's the fanciest, it's the most scalable, all of that. Yeah, those are important pieces to it. But fundamentally, you want to understand why you chose a piece of technology to solve a specific problem. See, the why is the real key piece for us as a fund. Why did you do this? Because the same problem can be solved in six different ways, at least, if not more. How you chose to slice that cake, how did you choose to build that combination, makes me understand how you look at technology. What are your strengths in technology? And if yours is a well considered design, it's a good design and it's well considered. You ask the right whys, you can answer your logic to reach these conclusions really well. That becomes very important for us as an investor, because we are not investing for what you've already built. We're investing for the future. We're going to give you money, you're going to hire a bunch of engineers, and you're going to build a lot more. So to me, the capability of the architecture, what capability we can understand, the technical capability that lies behind that architecture is what I'm trying to get at. Not just the architect. I don't fund the architecture. I fund the people who built that architecture. And that brings me to team, right? I mean, so team one is this technical capability. We really want deep technique, because we're looking for people who are AI first, AI builders, as we call them, right? Not just people who are AI users. So that's why we don't fund rappers. So you want people who can build. So that's one part of it, right? But then there's the other pieces, right? It's a journey where you have to build a team. Can you build a team? How persistent are you? You're going to face difficulty. It's a given. I mean, there'll be a few startups that don't, and I wish every one of my startups is like that. But the reality is probably not like that, right? And which means you need founders who have that, who have the ability to raise money, sell their product. You look at that entire ability in the team. So that's where the team comes in. I left out variety, right? Variety sounds like a weird metric to have, right? But actually, it's the easiest metric which you can measure. You can literally count it to understand complexity. AI does better where there is higher complexity. If it's an easy decision to make, the value AI will deliver will be low.
Now, how do you, given this VDAT model of evaluating a startup, um, typically, I hear from VCs that the jockey versus horse kind of a framework of evaluating startups. The jockey is the founder, like, are you betting on a founder? Or horse is the TAM, like, how big is the addressable market? Which I didn't hear in this framework at all. Do those factor into your decision making?
Of course, I mean, see, the jockey part has already come in, right? So this filtering is what. So today we see about 100 AI startups a month. Now that number has grown since we started. Over the, I mean, it was about, if I go back about 15 months, it would be 50 startups. Today it's 100. Of course, not all 100 are really AI first startups, but all 100 are claiming to be AI startups. So this framework helps us filter on those. So typically today, out of the 100, about 15 will come through. 15 to 20 will come through, right? So about 80%, 85% are eliminated with this framework. That allows us to scale the number of startups we look at and focus on the ones where we truly add value, right? In the end, it's a match between the founder and the fund, right? We should be able to, that symbiosis is very important. It's a 5, 7, 10 year relationship which you're building. So once we've narrowed it down to this lot, then you start looking at other factors. But primarily, this, once you have the right team, in the end, my strong belief, especially as an early stage investor, is that it's the people who make the big difference, right? Only people make you money. People are the guys who build that business. I mean, the same business handled by different people has very different results. I mean, I'm talking about the same business, not even two similar companies. There have been enough business families in India where once the business changes hands, it does very, very different results, right? So people, and especially at the early stage, see, you can change everything about a startup, and it still stays the same startup, but not the founders. As soon as you change the founders, it's not the same startup at all, right? So you have to bet on the founders. Of course, each of the, like, the TAM helps me understand whether the founders have business sense. If they've gone after a market which is really small, then there's a problem with the founders. I mean, it's not a TAM problem because of which I won't invest. I'm not investing because the founders are not smart enough. So you see, actually, it all boils down to even everything I gave you in the VDAT framework. If so, there are founders who come in and say that we are a startup, so obviously we don't have data. Seems obvious, seems like a very fair argument to make. But every guy we've invested in has had the data. It's not an unsolvable problem. It's a hard problem to solve for a startup, but definitely a solvable one. So a smart AI founder knows he will live or die by data, right? So you would have made the effort to get the data and build a great, some visibility into your product, make it actually work with real data before you come to a person like me. If you're not making the effort, how do I know you'll make it in the future?
Right. Hmm.
So see, we in the end are in the business of choosing people
Hmm. So,
primarily. Though I invest in AI, I invest in human intelligence
hmm,
first and
hmm.
foremost.
Okay. A lot of VCs very clearly say that if the market is not large enough, no matter how good the team, you'll not get a great outcome. So you don't agree with that?
No, I don't totally disagree with it. Actually, actually, I disagree with the market size thing. See, if you think that Facebook thought its market size is what it is today, and there is no way, right? Businesses evolve. I actually like sharply focused businesses which are going after a niche, because that niche, as long as the founder has the vision to expand the niche as he builds the business, right?
Got it. Okay.
Right. But however, on the other side, there are industries and markets which are bad industry, like where the margins are very competitive, very bad. Like I would not fund a airline. Now there are new airlines still being born in this country, right? So there are investors who like that, but to me the industry structure is against you. So even given a great team to go after a market which I don't believe in would be a harder problem for me. My advice to the founders will be to find a different market, and many times they do.
Yeah,
So
understood. Like,
actually, in fact, one of my teams, company called Lumo, they
hmm,
went after that same otter market that we spoke about, right? The note
yeah,
taking.
note taking.
I rejected them. They were called Insta Minutes at that time. I gave them a no. But I loved the founders. So I kept in touch with the team. Then they went ahead and built something called Lumo. And that's when I invested in them.
And what does Lumo do?
So Lumo is in the tooling space again. They sit on the both the sides of Gen AI, right? From prompt, so they help you in prompt engineering to give great prompts, because prompts also determine cost. Cost in AI is measured in input and output tokens. So that, of course, you prompt determines the input tokens, but based on the design of the input tokens, out number of output tokens also have a relation, which Lumo understands, and thus is able to guide you towards getting the same kind of output with lower number of tokens, so which is lower cost. And two, then measuring the output whether it meets your business outcomes, right? Your business, what you want to be able to do. What are you trying to say? Are you really answering the user's question? Are you really meeting, delivering outcome, measurable outcome? So they measure both the outcome side as well as, so they control the input and outputs. They don't touch the in between. It is a black box.
Okay, understood. So, like, a good analogy for that founder versus market question is like if you were to define Amazon as a bookseller, so that would be the wrong. You could look at an early investor on Amazon could have said that how big is the market for books? So, yeah, got it. Okay, I mean, good founders make their own markets. Understood. Mm.
But if you get stuck in the wrong market, then it's tough, because see, if you can build success, if you, even if the market is small, but you can build success there, then you can leverage that success to build beyond that market. But if you enter a market which itself will not give you any revenues or margins, then it's going to be tough for you to be able to do anything beyond it at all. You'll have to pivot out, and then that becomes a completely different story.
Mm. What
Now,
kind of
that also works in some cases, but then
mm,
it's a very
mm,
different story.
mm. What kind of founders do you like? Are you looking for grit and hustle and somebody who's able to like show sales achievement, or like that I have paying customers, or like what do you look for in a founder?
So the first thing we look for is the technical capability, right? And the VDAT framework kind of covers that, right? Because today I think building an AI itself is hard. It gets easier. I mean, LLMs become more capable by the day. Gen AI keeps changing, advancing. So it will become easier and easier to build, but still it is hard. It's not knowledge which is generally available. And how deeply you understand AI will determine the kind of products you will be able to build. So the first thing we're looking for is that technical ability in the team. However, we come in early. So mostly at the time we come in, you may not understand, I mean, you may not have much revenue. Mostly our companies have zero revenue. They have early pilots, POCs going on, but they do not have revenue proof. That comes later on. From our perspective, we are a post product pre revenue company, so you must build great product. So that's technical capability plus the ability to wrap it into a usable product, right? In the end, a product solves a problem. A technology is just capability, but a product solves a problem. So one, I have to see that problem solving ability very, very clearly. That solution orientation, customer orientation. See, when you build technology, you don't care how it's used. You just say, "Oh, I've solved this technical hard challenge." That's not enough. So that'll give you the technical capability, but not enough for us to invest. For that, you have to be able to solve a real problem, a real business problem. So that's the product piece, and that's fundamentally what we're looking for. Early stage, we're not looking for revenue, but how you think about the market matters. Like, see, almost for anything consumer for sure, India is a huge market, right? The numbers we have, 1.5 billion plus people, that allows us to say every market is large. But distribution is highly expensive, really, really expensive. So just saying large market doesn't do much, right? How am I getting to that market? So those numbers of thinking from sales cycle to number of people I need, how many meetings do I need to get to a sale, you need to think of your business, your numbers behind your business very, very clearly. Else, if the math doesn't work, it will never work. So while I'm not looking for proof, I want the thought process to be clear. Something I should be able to say, yeah, I feel comfortable saying, yeah, this looks like a sensible and something that'll work. In the end, there are always changes once you hit the rubber meets the road. That's market always teaches you 10 things which you did not know before you went into the market. But if your approach is from the starting not based on reality, then it's going to be a very hard, the learning cycles are too long. You don't have that much time available to you today. Business is happening at the speed of light. It's just crazy the way AI businesses are growing. So you can't be taking months and months to just figure out all those pieces.
What are the typical mistakes of distribution slash sales slash GTM? Like, what are some pitfalls to avoid?
So I think founders underestimate the difficulty of getting into the US market. For us, that makes a difference because we do this India US corridor a lot. Um US markets are far harder to enter than a lot of people imagine. At the same time, and they take typically more capital than most founders estimate. So those are one or two of the simple mistakes you made, and they are easy to recover from, by the way, also. The other is in the beginning thinking you can get a sales guy and build sales. Right? I am a technical founder. I need to just hire a great head of sales who will, he has this magic wand which he will do like this, and our sales will just skyrocket. Is not going to happen. Founders have to, in the early phases, until you have demonstrable PMF, and product market fit, and it's a term which is explained by many people differently. And the some great videos available online. I'll just say this: you, as a founder, always know when you have PMF because you see your curve sharpening, right? Your growth curve just sharpens. Sales cycles become shorter, number of deals, and in every that entire sales funnel, all the metrics around it fundamentally shift. When you sense that happening, you know that you've hit PMF, right? Hard to define exactly that moment, but as a founder, you know it. And I'm saying that until you've reached PMF, you cannot scale sales. Really speaking, it's still an artisan's work. You still need to, you're going to make mistakes in how you pitch, what the real problem is. See, enterprises sometimes buy for completely different reasons than we thought of why they're buying. Like that internal audit company startup that I was talking about, it's a company called Irame. One of the highly used use cases of theirs, which was actually asked for by a customer. They did not have that in their toolbox when they went to that customer, was moonlighting, to figure out how many of our employees are moonlighting. Now, this is a really popular use case in India. Now, you would not guess it looking from outside. I mean, it doesn't have any compliance, any regulatory overheads, nothing. But post COVID, this is a key concern for a lot of businesses in India. and these guys can address it. So they're selling also like hotcakes because they can just do this one problem. How do you figure this out sitting? Your sales guy won't help you figure it out. See, fundamentally, sales is about, so when we think of scaling a business, there are two pieces. There's a product piece, which you want to be largely like a cookie, right? So once you make the cookie, it's just a cookie cutter, same shape, you just keep beating it out, more of the same. The same goes for sales. People don't get this. That sales needs to be cookie cutter also before you can scale it. You cannot scale consulting based sales. People will look at the world's large consulting businesses and say, hey, those guys do consulting led sales. But those organizations took years to build. You don't have that sort of time. You need something which is, you cannot hire that ideal sales guy who understands your industry, understands your product, and understands the customer's problem, and then can put all three together and make it work, right? That's the founder. You fundamentally describe the founder when you describe those three capabilities. So, so you can't hire for that. It's much harder to hire for that. So you need to be able to bring it down to a cookie, which then any guy who has, so if you look at sales as persistence and discipline in going after customers, how many calls you make, how many, you look at that funnel perspective, running the funnel in a disciplined manner, then there's a lot of sales guys you can hire.
Tell me about pricing. You said pricing is still something people are figuring out for AI applications. I've seen a bunch of models. I've seen, of course, the standard monthly subscription model, but then there are also models where the tokens are priced, like you pay for X number of tokens, basically consumption based pricing. I guess these are the two models I've seen so far. Which model do you like better? Are there other models out there? What's your recommendation?
So actually, we strongly suggest that, especially for AI application companies, not true for tooling, but for AI applications, price outcomes. See, AI applications are delivering outcomes almost from day one, right? Definitely within 2 weeks of you buying the AI product, you have outcomes, measurable outcomes in your business. Unless that's happening, I mean, we've invested in the wrong startup, right? So if you are able to deliver outcomes, then you should be able to price those outcomes. Now, what is an outcome and what you should price is thus the debate, and that is not clear fully, right? Let me give you a example from my portfolio. So there's a company called Flowworks. Now, Flowworks basically does what? You describe a ideal customer for you. It then goes out, looks at multiple say, databases, builds a list of potential customers for you. Then it goes through your website, takes content from there, understands the customer's profile, builds a personalized campaign just for that one customer, email, LinkedIn, multiple communication channels, communicates with you, and actually does answer, reply. I mean, that entire cycle, including objection handling until it gets you to a meeting. Right? Now, there are two outcomes here. One first outcome, which is the easier to measure outcome, and probably what most traditional businesses will focus on, is the number of emails sent out or number of contacts reached out to. And if so, contacts is first, second is number of, because the number of communications you send to each customer will be multiple. So you could price on that. And third is you can price on every meeting you get. Now, ultimately, business is going to measure ROI based on item three. It does not measure ROI based on how many people, how many emails you sent out, or how many people you contacted. And that's the difference between AI and old software pricing. So old software, like email software, was priced on the number of the emails sent out, right? So you're moving two layers away from that. Not even the number of contacts you contacted, but actually meetings you got set. And once you start moving there, the alignment with business is very high. However, no software has ever been sold like that. How much do I pay per meeting? Now, you need to understand the customer's business to price it correctly. A meeting for you versus a meeting for somebody else means different things. I'm an investment banker. I'm doing $100 million deals. If you get me a meeting with the right company, that meeting has a lot more value than I'm a guy selling water purifiers, a 20,000 rupee or 10,000 rupee product. Very, very different outcomes for us. So now the pricing has become much more complicated. But of course, the key point is direction of the pricing is clear. It will move away from input and more towards outcome. It has always fundamentally been priced on input, on effort, on seats, all subscriptions, on time. Why is time a great metric or number of seats a great metric? Those are cost based metrics. But if you go look at any business, it has to justify its cost based on the ROI, right? So now AI allows you to jump straight to ROI rather than do all the intermediary steps, which is why the Jacobs happen faster because you are able to justify the ROI. ROI is clear to you. Your product delivers ROI. It delivers outcome, and then businesses feel much more comfortable spending more on it.
Hmm. Uh, will more pricing become concierge pricing then? Because, like you said, the outcome based pricing needs you to evaluate the value of that outcome to a business.
So it's hard. I think it will move towards that, but it's a hard journey, right? I mean, if the same outcome means different things for different businesses, it becomes harder to price it. What are the data points you need to be able to price well? Not yet clear, right? Will businesses protest too loudly? Because see, it's much easier to do from a budgeting perspective. Number of seats is very easy. You know the number of seats. Now, every time you hire a guy, you just assign this is the software budget. So from a budgeting cycle perspective, cost-based pricing was easier to absorb. So I'm saying we probably will see a mix of pricing models, and where will the dust settle? To my point, my view or my advice to founders is experiment with it here. Go do multiple things. Look at covering cost in one manner, but really earning money by delivering outcome. I mean, to my mind, it's very simple. You must earn money when I, as a fund, only earn money when I give you superior returns to the market. That's the only way. We run on something called carry, which is basically share of profit, which only kicks in when I beat the market.
Hmm.
So performance based pay, and you keep advising HR wants to keep building performance based pay. Why not for software? And if AI is virtual employees, and lots of AI is being sold as virtual employees, and instead of having a fixed salary, they just have performance based pay. So we'll see a lot is to evolve here. I think, Akshay, we are still in the early days of this evolution.
Hmm. Fascinating. Um, what is the amount of money you give to a startup that you invest in? An average check size?
For us, the average first check we write is about $750,000 or 6.5 crores. Is would be we can go a little higher than that. We can go a little lower than that, but that's the sweet spot for us.
And you're on fund one, fund two. What is the current fund?
So I had a fund alpha, which was a syndicate, right? So that's why we call it fund alpha, not fund one, and we call my current fund one, but technically it's the second fund. Uh, I had investors, and so I did 12 startups out of Fund Alpha, which are all that fund is fully invested, deployed. We've in fact sold four of those 12 businesses, eight are still in the portfolio, and we'll look at exiting those over the next 2 years. While Fund One, which we launched in end of 2023, is we've made nine investments out of it, out of the 18 we plan to make. So we're only halfway through discovering the portfolio, and of course you keep money back to uh, double down on your some of the startups. So that all capital is still in the bank. So yeah, we'll be investing out of this for quite some time.
And what is the size of this fund?
So this is a 200 crore or $25 million fund. uh, and which is why that average check size for the first check for the first 18 companies is that, and then the winners, of course, we will invest more capital behind.
And are these family offices your LPs, or who are they?
A lot of family offices. Our anchor LP is Sidbi, uh, and then a lot of family offices. Both Raja and I, the two GPs, have put in a significant chunk of money also. Um, we we feel more comfortable that way. I mean, we should risk enough of our own capital to give confidence to our LPs that actually we'll be larger than most LPs. I mean, not as large as Sidbi, but larger than most almost every other LP.
Okay, okay. Uh, what is the difference between a syndicate manager and a VC fund manager? So you said you were managing a syndicate earlier. What does that mean?
So, see, syndicate, firstly, each investment happens, it's a standalone investment because you use the angel fund structure, right? So each investment is a separate risk pool kind of thing. And typically, most syndicates don't have teams running them, right? So when I ran the syndicate, I did not have a large team. As a VC, what happens, it just gets more structured. Uh, the capital is raised upfront and the portfolio is discovered later. That's fundamentally, I would say, is, in practice, the difference. The other piece is, of course, the amounts of capital are different, right? Syndicates will typically be smaller, right? Once you, like, we are a 200 crore fund today, I will only take a check of at least 2 crores from any investor, which limits the pool of people who can participate in my fund.
Hmm. The syndicate is like a bunch of friends co-investing. Like one of them would take the lead, present an opportunity, and the out of the other, some would say, "Yes, I want to invest along with you."
So it is very flexible. It could be that friends coming together and doing it, right? Or like in my case, I had it a little more structured, right? I mean, I had investors who had committed to X amount of money to my to the syndicate, and I could take it over 5 investments, 6 investments. I mean, they said this much money is there, you take it when you need it, and invest it on my behalf, right? So it was a blind pool per se. They were not looking at each startup,
They were not
but
individually assessing. Okay.
but a lot of syndicates will work the other way, which is that each investment they'll go talk to their friends about it. They'll hold one meeting, and people will then say, "Okay, I also like this startup," and they'll put in money. So it is a flexible structure because each investment stands alone. It's very flexible how you raise that money, how do you define all of the pieces around it is flexible. So I think it's a great innovation in the ecosystem. From an ecosystem perspective, I think it was great. It's also a great learning ground. See, I've been an entrepreneur operator for most of my life, right? I built multiple businesses, sold multiple businesses. To become an investor took, I mean, I had to prove to myself also that I can do it. It's very easy to, say you can do it. Yeah, you understand. Yeah, but to be actually able to do it. So to me, the syndicate helped me establish all the pieces, understand the entire ecosystem, build the infrastructure, build the relationships into the startups, into investors, into the other investors, other funds, etc. Because ultimately, so for example, the fund ecosystem works only, it's like a, take a startup's journey from being a startup to a public company is a long marathon, right? Which is run in multiple legs. And as an early stage investor, I'm kind of running the first leg. I carrying the baton in the first leg. The second leg, I'm probably running alongside the guy who's holding the baton, and I'm probably out by the third leg.
So, is it harder to, as a VC fund, is it harder to find deals or to raise money?
I think both are hard. That's a good question. I'm trying to think which one is harder. Probably raising money because we see a lot of startups maybe today, but that may be unique to us. Actually, I find the startup piece just been around. We're the only ones doing really. We are AI first fund. We were first in
But
that.
AI has a lot of funds now, right? Like, and
Every
large.
fund is literally, I mean, everything is
Yeah.
AI, so everybody's investing
Everything.
in
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
AI.
yeah. But
But
then, like, this Girish has this very large fund, Together Fund, uh, and so that has that celebrity tag of being backed by Girish, and so I mean there are uh, alternatives. Why is it that you don't face any problem in attracting startups?
so, two parts to it. One is that having been around a long time, we've built a decent brand recognition, right? And this focus around AI, like, of course, yeah, together Girish is doing that with that focus today. But historically, that's not where they were. I mean, historically, there were nobody. We were there first. We were pioneers in the space. So that
You
gives you
were
a certain
AI
amount.
first right from the beginning.
Correct. From
Okay.
2017, I've been doing only AI,
Okay.
which gives you a
Hmm.
certain, and you are able to build the relationships into the ecosystem, and thus the inbound flow for us is pretty decent. Today, we get about 50% of our deals through the inbound funnel. But the rest 50% we work really hard for, and we in fact use some portions of AI for doing that, which is hunting for AI startups, right? Because that allows us to build relationships early on. Sometimes we'll find these founders long before they start raising money. They'll only take the check from us when they're raising money or when they're ready for money. But having reached them first, having had the conversations, and I'm happy to help, right? It's, I didn't get to where I was without advice and without help and support from a lot of people. And as part of that, in that outreach program that we run, we go out, we find founders. Some who are very early and they're still uh, figuring things out, and we help them. We happy to share our thoughts so that they can figure it out faster, and that works. And that builds that ability to get into the deals at the right time, into a lot more. Uh, so, so to me, it's not as hard to find investors, like family offices you talked about. So multiple family offices today are investors, thankfully, in SenseAI. Very thankful for all the support we've received from uh, multiple families here. But the pool of capital in India is very different from the pool of capital available in the US, let's say, ecosystem. So I think the venture ecosystem is still young also, right? I mean, I think the first funds would have come around 1999, and that time maybe the first, I'm talking literally the first fund. So the history of venture in India is less than, is 25 years old. And if you see the amount of capital deployed, all of those pieces, we are uh, in the early stage of the venture ecosystem developing, investors understanding the asset class, really being able to understand which managers to support or not, what thesis to go up. So I think there's a, that part of the industry is still very much being growing and maturing as we speak.
Okay. You said you do outbound. So uh, how do you decide that I want to, like, what are your filters? Because it's a very large space out there, right? So what signals do you look for?
It's a great question, and a little bit of our secret sauce. So I'm going to try and answer it, but I won't be able to be fully transparent here, right? I talked about the technical founder, right? So now you can build that profile of that technical founder, kind of, right? He would have gone to a great technical school, college in India or wherever, but a great technical college. Two, he would have worked for a great tech company. What do I mean by a great tech company? Is where they build tech at scale. I mean, not just innovation, but also scale, because without scale, without scale gives you data, data gives you AI. So that entire journey, you would have seen some portions of that journey also happen, which means, let's say, of course, all the global big tech, Indian big tech, all the unicorns, unicorns maybe. So that background itself allows you to filter through a lot of the clutter. But not all of these guys are A into AI, B building entrepreneurs. So then you add additional pieces around signals to figure out that he is a founder and he's building something in AI. Now, actually the filters are less important, because in our business, in this outreach, let's say I reached out to you, Akshay, that, and because you, let's say you did this podcast, and after that podcast somehow or the other we figured out that, hey, he's doing something in AI, let's talk to him.
Hmm.
What do? You will politely say, no, I'm not building a AI startup.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
and
Hmm.
no harm done. You're not going to get
Hmm.
irritated that
Hmm.
Sensei reached out to you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So even if our precision is low,
But doesn't it dilute the brand? As I wouldn't imagine Sequoia reaching out ever.
I think, see, the two pieces, different, one different eras and two different focus areas, right? Sequoia is not really your seed stage investor.
Right.
It's a
Okay.
Series A investor. It
Hmm.
fundamentally is a Series A investor. What it
So
does
there's a
well
much
at
smaller
VC,
pool. Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we are the discovery layer in the ecosystem.
Hmm.
There is no list to work off. There's no list
Yeah.
of startups. Sequoia is looking at our list, people we
Yeah. Yeah.
funded.
Yeah. 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 True. True. True.
So
Hmm.
that piece, and two, I think also the era has changed, right? I mean, the amount of data available is very, very different from what it used to be. What I can do today using AI and using digital tools and be able to build an outreach program wasn't possible. So Sequoia had to do things like the scout program, where it had scouts which literally used to go out to look for startups. And I'm just giving you, I don't want to give you names, but it would be one of the funds we've talked about, which has reached out to me, say, to, can you introduce me to this founder? Not even in my portfolio, but saw that I'm connected to him on LinkedIn, so asked me for an introduction. So it's not that these funds, the ones we think don't reach out. They do reach out.
Yeah. 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 Hmm. Okay. Understood.
It's a
Um.
much smaller program than ours is.
Hmm. Hmm. So you said you've been an operator, entrepreneur, exited multiple ventures. Just give me like a summary of your journey. What led up to you becoming an AI first investor in 2017 when most of the world was not even talking about AI.
Okay, so I'll give you the quick and dirty. So the first venture I built was, when I was coming out of business school, I had a choice of taking my day one job, but there was this thing called the internet, which was kind of just coming around. I'm talking 96, 97, right? So 1996, 97 is when the Netscape IPO had happened. I had started using the internet. I was excited by it. So I thought, this is, rather than do the traditional path, which is after MBA, do a day, join a campus job, I went and did an internet startup. And I was lucky to find the Kotak Mahindra Group. They were the initial backers for that internet startup. Um, there were no VCs actually to approach in
Yeah.
1997. None.
Right. Yeah.
So built that business, sold that in 2001. This was
What was
India's
it?
largest digital content aggregator. We aggregated content literally from everybody who had digital data, right? From newspapers to people like CMI and Crisil who did corporate data, to then later on we even spoke to people who had music and any kind, magazines, you name the data. Literally we had 200 different providers in by 2000, right?
And who were
So
the
that,
buyers?
sorry.
Who were the buyers? Who was buying this
So
content?
this was being sold to. So had two basic communities. One was corporates who were using it for competitor research, so that there it was more the CRISIL and news and competitor information kind of data, industry analysis. But the bigger business for us was portals. So all the dot coms which came around from 1999 onwards and got funded, literally a series A would happen and the founder would call me, ki Rahul, data laga do. Because
Yeah.
you see, funding was that time based on page views,
Right. And
right?
more content you publish, the more page views you get.
So you can't set up a content operation overnight and have pages, right? You can have an idea for setting up a portal, but setting up the operations for it is very tough, much tougher. And so it was much easier to syndicate content. So 80, 90% of the content they just take from people like me, and then add 20% of very specific content which they thought they needed to add for their audience. And that became the initial set for multiple startups, right?
And you were not an engineer, right? So you were more on the sales and business side, or?
No, no. So I was a product guy. So I'm not really a software guy, but I know enough software. I look at architecture, but I'm a product guy. So I helped take that as the bridge between engineering and business. I mean, I was one of the guys who ran the business, but point I'm making, I'm a product guy. So I helped build that product. Then the next business. So when after selling this, what I'd done is taken lots of data. So when I said digital, so imagine what digital meant in 1999 also was very different from what it means today. So newspapers would publish basically, the pre-press files because the presses had become digital.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. E-paper was it used to be
No,
called.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so what looks like a e-paper today, I'd get that.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
It was digital, but
hmm.
it was not really.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did
yeah.
not have
It was like
articles.
getting a PDF file with everything laid out and the ads also laid out and
So sometimes a little better than that, but that's fundamentally it. So we learned to work with lots of data, which was not well tagged, well organized, well structured, and then structure it, tag it, metadata, manage all of that. So that I'd set up a production system for that. So basically, took that and converted that into a new business where we did data management for um, global companies. And
so
then
which is where your familiarity with enterprise search comes in. You were talking of how Google couldn't crack enterprise search.
so enterprise search was also that familiarity happened actually even in the first business because all this data, we had these 200 different suppliers. We were used to use a search engine called Verity, which nobody even remembers today. But that was literally the first engine that came out, right? And so we used Verity. And so I've been doing search all my life. Uh, I'm very familiar with that set of technologies. And which brought me to my third business, which was a big data business out of Japan. And here again, so I'm talking 2002 and 2003 beginning. At that time, there's no term called big data or no SQL. These terms did not exist in the world. But what was clear to me is that when you have large enterprises and who have large quantums of data, doing any kind of analytics using databases wasn't working. So you had these, BI, business intelligence tools, data warehouse. These were all terms which existed in the industry. High, very expensive, very inefficient. For example, one of our first customers, actually the first customer was Honda. The second customer was a company called Toyota. And Toyota's uh, data center had 37 servers, which we brought down to 4 servers.
Because of redundancy of data.
Yeah, no, and the database would not otherwise be able to perform. It was not performant, right? So you needed multiple copies of the database to serve the queries they had. We just replaced it with search, which is no SQL, and we had a very unique design of the index and things like that, and that kind of answered. But the other problem we solved during this piece was so Japanese text has no spaces, and it uses kanji, which is symbolic, and so a single kanji can be a word. Single, of course, combinations are also words. So if you have a sentence which has 30 kanji on it, it could logically be 30 words. Of course, it's not going to be 30. But is it 7, 8, 12, 15? It was very hard for computers to figure out then. Dictionaries and rules did not work. I mean, you just had really bad accuracy. So that problem we solved using NLP. And there was this Norwegian engineer who actually came up with that algorithm to use NLP and solve it. And he became the prototypical technical founder in my head. I mean,
So
so
he's the Christian that
yes,
you were speaking about. Okay, interesting.
yes, yes, yes.
Hmm.
So before that, so I'm talking 2003, 2004. We were using NLP to solve a real business problem, and it delivered value. I mean, this is classical machine learning, NLP, natural language programming. and not AI as we know it, Gen AI as we know it today. But actually, that still forms the base layer even for large language models. This
Yeah,
is a
essentially it's language, right? Like
yes.
they're also, yeah,
No, and the
definitely.
first thing you do, so this breaking up that Japanese sentence into constituent words is called tokenization.
Which is, yeah, even today
And
that's
now
how.
you see, now you know why you use the word tokens all the time,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
why a token is not equal to, exactly equivalent to a word. So 75 words is 100 tokens. I mean, that's the thumb rule. So that's what we solved using machine learning right in 2003. So that business built up. I got Honda, Toyota, Canon, a whole bunch of Japanese companies, then US, then India, and then sold that business in 2016. So when that business got sold, I had capital.
That business was helping clients to make sense of their data, search for data, find relevant data, stuff like that.
Absolutely. And so all big data analytics, so reports, and then visualize it. And it had a monitoring pieces inside it as well. So all the nice, lovely things you want to do with lots of data, we allowed you to do as a business. Right? And automotive was a huge segment for us, and electronics was the second. So these were the two big, and these are industries where Japan does well. So they ended up being our focus areas. So when I sold, after that business got sold, I had enough capital to now decide to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah, who bought it? Like a Japanese company or?
Yeah, it stayed in Japanese ownership, still is. So then what had become clear to me is that AI is the future. I had made money using AI. And so to me, it was very, very clear, crystal clear. This is the future. Of course, in 2017, 18, 19, 20, even, when I used to tell people AI is the future, people used to look at me, "Ji, AI hota kya hai?" Like there would be, all kinds of skepticism around it. It's too small a world. Today, everything is AI. But, I mean, go even 3 years back, early
Were you
2022,
were you
you'd start
surprised
thinking
by
about it.
ChatGPT 3.5 or 3? Like, did that surprise you? Because you had a framework of this is AI, these are the use cases for AI, this is how businesses can use AI. Did ChatGPT ask, like, kind of make you question that framework and
Not really totally, I would say. The key piece about, so one, OpenAI had been around for a few years, and that they'd been hiring researchers at crazy salaries, and they're trying to really, you know, AI on steroids. One way to think of what was there before large language models and ChatGPT. They're just taking all of that and putting it on steroids, and that thought process was clear to us, and that we could see that those things will happen. Right? I mean, ultimately, you could not keep
you
doing it.
could envisage that something like ChatGPT would exist.
Yeah, time frame, I would not say that, or where we are today. If you ask me to, even 4 years back, to predict this point in time and this kind of capability, I would have got it wrong. I would have underestimated for sure. So the steep curve which we are seeing, the amount of capital we are seeing coming into AI, would not have been able to predict in 2021 also. But that this is the future, and this will be the future, and that, intelligence has always been so expensive and uh, so critical to success, right? Uh, it's one of the scarce resources. People keep thinking of job loss, but you don't understand that the a lot of people just support a few people who are really doing the decisioning, who really moving the needle, right? There's one guy who invented the car. Ford, literally, it was one man's vision, which everybody else in Ford supported in such a large company today. So once you start thinking like that, you'll realize that shortage of being able to think through things and execute them has. If we could do multiple eras of industrialization compressed into 10 years, you'd see that the number of jobs would multiply. Lots of things will change. So if you start thinking of intelligence that way, you realize its power is immense. It's not just about You have to think about productivity, you have to think about access. Like, so many people in India, we are underserved literally on every front. If you look at our population, whether it's education, whether it's access to healthcare, you go, we are, I'm lucky enough to stay in a large city, in a metro. I have access to the best healthcare, the best legal advice, the best education. But you go 200 kilometers away from where I stay, and it suddenly starts disappearing. And how are we going to ever deliver high quality education, high quality healthcare, if everything is going to have to? I mean, imagine the number of schools and colleges we need to keep up with our growing population, and thus the number of teachers. We cannot have that. Government has this vision of having 35% GER ratio, which is gross enrollment ratio in higher education. If you do the math in terms of number of college seats you need and how many teachers you need, you'll find those numbers become very hard to imagine. So, to solve these larger problems, you need AI. You will need, and once you see that, then it becomes easy to see that there's going to be a huge amount of wealth creation around here. So, that's fundamentally some of the pieces I saw at least early on. And what convinced me this is I mean, it's necessary. There used to be talk that earth cannot support so many humans. We are supposed to peak oil, we're supposed to run out of oil. We've Yeah, so these are all issues which have at some point or the other come up, and the limitation has always been our imagination.
Hmm. Fascinating. Uh, there are a lot of these pet phrases of people in the AI world, like scaling law and the bitter truth and attention is all you need, context is all you need. Do you have any of these favorite pet phrases which you can explain to my audience?
Happy to explain some of those, but
Yeah.
so see, you want to make it easy for people to understand, so you need those pet phrases. I mean,
Uh,
so attention is all you need comes out straight. It's the headline of the title of the paper, which set off this entire large language model boom. Yeah.
hmm, hmm,
It was a seminal paper, which was actually came out of Google, and
hmm,
OpenAI beat Google to the race to get the world's attention, right?
hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, to me, the what I love about this intelligence era is that our imagination literally will become unbounded. We'll be able to experiment with and understand things. We will live longer, healthier lives. AI will be critical in solving those problems around humanity, around diseases, aging, all of these problems. There's so many of these which we have not really conquered. And not our lifespans, but our health spans will fundamentally increase. And we'll be thanking AI for all of that good that it will do humanity. So the timeline on that was 10 years. And that remains that. I mean, maybe 9 years left now. But if you go look at the world's fastest growing AI companies, they're all application companies and not foundational AI companies. There are at least 20 AI application companies that have hit 100 million in revenues, which means their valuations are well north of $1 billion, right? Well north of $1 billion. And these guys have hit those numbers. Of course, the US markets are larger, easier to hit those revenue numbers there. But this has happened in 3 years, 2 years, even 1 year.
Hmm. With a very small headcount.
Yes, with very low headcounts. So in India, we may not match the revenue per employee. That metric is going to be different for us than it is in the US. But the fact of the matter is, it can be done in a small amount of time, short amount of time, with a limited amount of capital. If you go look at all these $100 million companies, I mean, Harvey, Lovable, Together AI, I mean, I can just reel off names, uh, Cursor. I mean, these are not, all of them are not super funded. They just ramped very, very quickly because they solved real problems well. And I think that's really the challenge for us. As I'm seeing, I'm very, very bullish about this because of the kind of innovation I'm seeing. Even within our portfolio, there are multiple companies that have gone from zero to close to $1 million in revenue in less than 9 months, 6 months. These are the kind of timelines, and these are Indian companies. Some of them, of course, selling into the US. Those are actually growing faster. So that then the example would be from 200,000 to a million plus in 6 months. So those kind of numbers used to take 2 years to achieve. So we are seeing a 3x to 4x acceleration. And I'm talking about Indian startups. Today, given the kind of multiples we're seeing in the AI era, we are talking about a 25x of revenue at least, which means to hit $1 billion in valuation, you need to hit $40 million in revenue. Actually, if the growth curve is fast, steep enough, I mean, 30, 40x is not a problem at all. So, how many companies can we build in the next 10 years or 9 years, which will do at least 25, 30 million in revenue? Starting today. Let's even forget the last 1 year that's gone by. My bet will be at least 100. If not more, I mean, I will. I mean, you'll be a few years later. You'll be saying, "Rahul, you underestimated." Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we are
yeah,
only
yeah,
in 2030, and we are already got 100.
yeah,
Yeah, unicorns. What are
yeah,
you
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
Though the assumption there is distribution, right? I mean, cracking distribution might not be as easy, right?
So for consumer products, distribution becomes critical. For B2B, it's the enterprise sales piece, and or um, maybe product-led growth (PLG), that motion. Whichever path these businesses follow, I'm trying to say 30 million in, let's say, a 7 year timeline is not a hard problem to crack, right? If you start looking at it like that, how many companies can hit 30 million in revenue in 7 years' time? Then the number of the 100 becomes a much easier to understand problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. True, 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 true. Yeah, yeah.
So, and see, distribution, if the product is good enough, distribution follows. The number of people who are willing. So, again, going back to my portfolio, Iname, which does internal audit, signed a distribution agreement with PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four in audit. Why? Because the product is that good. Distribution follows. People want AI innovation. There is a unmet demand in the market. I mean, in literally every boardroom I have walked into, every C level guy I've spoken to, keep asking you for AI solutions. What do you think? Which is the best AI marketing tool? Now, it's a hard question for a VC to answer. A, it may not be in my portfolio. So it's in my portfolio, easy question to answer. And B, I'm not in the business of saying which is the best product. I mean, more in the thing of saying, like, which is the best business to invest in rather than which product to buy. But I get asked that question a lot. I mean, now we built answers for that because simply because I get asked so often. But you see the point I'm trying to make. There's an unmet demand which is clearly visible, and the budgets are moved towards AI. People are, and if you also look at build versus buy, so the use was a debate whether people build or whether they'll buy. Right now, buy is winning. I think build will catch up over time, but buy is happening across the board. People are experimenting across the board. Some of that revenue will disappear because people will run, after the experiment, choose one tool to buy or no tool to buy and things like that. But the point I'm trying to make, the momentum, and this is the momentum is driven by what? Not by hype. Revenue momentum is never driven by hype. Revenue momentum is driven by products that deliver value. If AI keeps on delivering value at the pace it is delivering value, building the 100 AI unicorns, I'm telling you, is going to be an underestimate.
Should India try and build its own foundational model?
Of course, we should. Should
Hmm.
I fund it is a very different question. No, we
Hmm.
have so many languages to protect. We have
Hmm.
so much rich history. Our people are different. Our questions we ask are different. Our culture is different. All of that, AI at one level subsumes all of that, right? If you go look at a large language model, it has all that built in, and the way it answers has a cultural basis to answer, a language basis to answer those questions. So, like for example, if I'm explaining a math problem to a engineering student in India, in let's say in Patna or in any other smaller city or town in India, versus I'm doing this sitting in New York City, should the explanation be the same?
Yeah,
No.
the examples need to be
Yeah.
localized. Yeah. Mm,
How I take him through the problem? What problem do I take him? What examples do I give? What
mm,
names do I use?
yeah, 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 yeah. Mm.
So when you start thinking, cultural context and language are integral to any country. I mean, forms the basis of our culture. So that we should have a large language model is a necessity, in my opinion. I mean, I'm highly supportive of what the government is trying to do here, and hopefully we will have those great models, much like China has been able to do a good job of it. China's done a outstanding job of it, honestly speaking.
China's approach has been open source models, right? What is the difference between open source and a proprietary model?
So in an open source model, fully open source model, even the weights, the entire, you can just download it and run it on your machine. And you can also make changes to it because it is open source. You literally have the diagram and you can say, no, no, move it here, do this, do that. And you can change the behavior of the product. And you can run it anywhere without paying any license.
Downloading a trained brain in a way, like a very layman understanding, which already can read, write, speak, whatever, certain language, or based on whatever has been the training data and the focus. So you can download that brain and then you can modify it on your local hardware. And that modified version is only with you. Nobody else has that modified version.
Absolutely. So that entire piece is what the open source piece is. And by the way, pipe shift, that's what pipe shift enables, right? That exact process you described. On the other side, you have OpenAI, which has today OpenAI has also finally lived up to its name and released some open source models, two of them. Till now, it was very closed AI, not OpenAI, uh, but Anthropic. There are multiple guys who Gemini who will build models which they own the source code of. So you don't have access to the brain. You can ask the brain questions, and the brain will answer your questions. So you have access to its outputs, but not its internal design. You can't run it for free on any server you want. It is hosted and controlled by Google or Meta or OpenAI or Anthropic, right? Somebody owns the model and controls the model, and only they know how the internally the model looks like. You have no access to it. It's a black, it's a complete black box as far as you're concerned. It's like the Google search engine. You don't know what's inside the search engine or how it was built. You can just ask Google a query and it'll give you an answer.
So, when you talk of proprietary data and training a model on proprietary data, like say the construction example which we discussed, and so if you have proprietary data of construction site videos and you want to train a model on that, do you typically train like one of these proprietary models, or do you train an open source model in these kind of scenarios where you want to train a model? What does that mean to train a model?
So, one, you can build a model from scratch. That's a fully proprietary model. And that is what China has done, and which is why it's phenomenal. And when you say build a foundational model, you say start from scratch. Literally, you just have the main base algorithm and it builds the entire thing. And you've designed that algorithm. So you start from scratch. On the other hand, where you take a existing model and then you modify it, post train it, you fine tune it. And fine tuning is a technical word which means to make these changes in a large language model or a Gen AI model. That's where you take something which came out of the box, but you say कि नहीं इसको मेरे तरफ से change करो, like मेरा वाला pink, change the color. If you think of other things, that's what you would do, right? And that can, obviously the cost of doing that is much lower than building from scratch, right? Uh, and the third model is, of course, to just use something which is ready made and just like OpenAI, and you have no control on it, right? So you have three models, starting from zero, starting with something which is pre-built, but then changing it to your liking. And three is using something which somebody just gives you and you consume as is, where is. So those are the three different approaches, I'd say. Now, when you come to something like uh, Continue.ai and their construction piece, that is not a large language model. That is a computer vision model. So in their case, they had to do a lot of work, which is very, very proprietary to them. And it's 3D, it's three dimensional. It is not even a two-dimensional model. So they built a lot of proprietary stuff. On the other hand, um, if you go look at companies which are building in the language space, right?
Like say the internal audit one.
Iname, which is the internal audit tool, or Code Karma, which is doing helping you optimize code, or um, Confido, which acts as a nursing assistant for U.S. hospitals and consumes certain amount of medical data, but a lot of patient data and hospital records. Each of them are working in different domains, and none of these architectures is only just a Gen AI model or a large language model, but they build some custom models, they build some proprietary pieces around it. And so that's typically how AI has been done in practice.
So when you say build a custom model, that's like a small language model, an SLM that they would have built.
So small language model would be a good example. Like so Flowworks, for example, built multiple small language models because they were doing that sales piece. So they were building some small language models. Some guys need to build sometimes only work with a larger model because they need larger context. They need more diversity of knowledge available to them. So depending on the use case, what is your starting point and what is your end point has to be very, very clear.
And you can fine tune a proprietary model also. Like you could take a Gemini, fine tune it, feed it your data so that it is
No, it's not fine tuning. That is not
okay.
fine tuning.
Okay.
The date, the model can consume your data along with it, but typically that sits outside the model.
Okay.
It
So that's
does
more at
not
the
sit.
prompt stage. Your prompt can
Yes,
include. Okay.
yes. So you can
Okay.
give it context. So that's
Hmm.
where the context window and size of the
Hmm.
context window starts to matter.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So
So
you
the
have
reason to build your own small language model is to reduce your token cost. Otherwise, you will consume a lot of tokens because you'll have to give context to every prompt.
absolutely. So token cost would be one simple example, one very clear reason, but more also domain specific. Uh, like each industry has very technical terms inside it, right? Like take prompt engineering. I mean, prompt and engineer, both English words, they mean very different things once you put them together, and they're very AI specific. You're not going to bang into it in literature, for example. If you're studying English literature, would you have it learn prompt engineering? No, probably not. But then you would have all of Shakespeare that you'll want to learn and the turn of phrase and what that means, right? Or idioms, for example. So depending on your use case, what is the syntax or the structures you wanted to learn change, and you wanted to do better. It's not that you needed to only know that, but it needs to really know your domain very, very well. When a internal auditor talks about revenue, what he means by revenue is not the same as what you and I may mean with revenue, because revenue, annual recurring revenue, can mean, actually annual recurring revenue itself can have five different definitions. But which one does it this business mean? When it says ARR, it means this specific way to recognize this revenue. and that definition is specific to that, maybe that industry or that business in particular, and you have to thus understand what it means, because you're going to use it for audit and not just for general purpose to understand what is revenue.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rahul, for the lovely chat. I learned so much. We could keep going on, but I guess it's time for me to say bye to you now.
Thank you, Akshay, for having me here. It was a great conversation. Lovely set of questions. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.